where that leads me to is this deep awareness of how all of my clients that are coming to me, I'm really just healing a part of me. So I've attracted a number of women that are about 10, 15 years older than me. And it's just like, I feel like I'm healing a version of me that is on that timeline that will allow me to jump to a greater possibility, not only for me, but for them.
Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It's my pleasure to have Jennifer Lyall with us. Jennifer is the founder of the Thrive Client Attraction System. She's also an intuitive business mentor. She helps conscious entrepreneurs gain clarity, focus, and trust their intuition so they can bring their $1 million ideas to life and scale to their next level in business, doing what they love. Jennifer, it's so great to have you on the show.
Oh my gosh, so good to be here. I'm really excited. My heart's like jumping up and down with excitement. It's like, yay, we get to play with Stephan.
Okay, awesome. I love that. Okay, well, first of all, I want to hear your origin story, and I am sure that our listener does too. Like, how did you end up becoming a conscious and intuitive business mentor and tap into the universal intelligence in such a profound way?
My business sucked. 2008, I started my own business, and it's called Live Healthy. And the intention was to inspire people how to be proactive about their health. And so I had a video podcast. So that was when podcasting was at its infancy. Wellness was just building some momentum. And I wanted to have a business part time, make some money while the kids were in school, and just have some advertisers come on board. But there was a big problem, and that was that I didn't believe in myself. So I found it really difficult to convince, right? There's that getting energy, convince companies to sponsor my podcast that I co-hosted with a naturopathic doctor, because I was just a mom who was passionate about wellness. Why would they want to put any money behind what I was doing? I was exhausted because once the kids would go to bed, I would stay up to 2 a.m. trying to build backlinks and try to build an audience for my video podcast. And I was just so depleted. And I came to this place where I was tired of beating myself up. I was really only working at my business part-time and expecting full-time results. And so there was this magical moment. It was March of 2010, 6 a.m. It was pitch black. The house was quiet. And I remember sitting on my couch and just giving myself permission to discover what made my heart sing. And I didn't really know what I believed in. I wasn't religious at all. My family was Catholic, but they had a bit of a falling out with the local church. And so I was never baptized, and we never really went to church. I'm the baby of 7, so my parents were just trying to get by. So I didn't know if I believed in a God, but I believed that there was something more out there, but I didn't know what that more was. And it was like in that moment of surrender, the universe said, she's finally listening. Send in the signals. The signals were always there, but I just was finally able to pay attention to them. I let go of the death grip on life and how I thought things needed to be. I was so controlling. And so that journey of surrender was huge. In that surrendering, I discovered crystals, and I discovered pendulum. I discovered automatic writing and meditation. And it was through automatic writing that I was given my own modality called Connect to You. And the intention of that work is to connect the soul with the heart and the mind. And the universe said, okay, go do a case study. And it's just like, I don't know about that. And so I got brave enough and did that case study. And it was just incredible because I went from a stick drawing of wavy lines, move the energy this way, stand here and say this prayer, this affirmation over there. And here's through the automatic writing, I was given a script for a meditation and just guide people through that. Now, what I didn't realize is I'd actually been working with energy since I was 4 years old. My uncle's an energy healer, And my big brother had a water skiing accident. So I would rub his back all the time when I was little. And my other siblings and my parents would be like, well, rub my shoulders too, they're sore. And I got later when I was trying to figure out what was going to be next for me, I remember talking to my uncle in Gibraltar. It's like, what's this energy work that you do? Is it Reiki? He's like, well, I don't know. It's just energy. And there's one in every generation. And maybe you're the one who's doing it in your generation too. So that's where things started to open up for me.
Hmm. So what do you do from an energy healing standpoint? Because that doesn't sound like it's core to your business now. Are you still doing energy healing in some capacity?
Absolutely. I am releasing the energetic blocks that stop entrepreneurs from stepping into their purpose. It is the foundation. Mastering, I teach entrepreneurs how to master their energy, expand their own personal awareness. I do energy clearing, and I also teach entrepreneurs how to clear their own energy as well. You know, I did a corporate presentation um, teaching people how to check their inner battery as often as they check their phone battery. And in the handout, I had a little note about a chi bath. And somebody said, ooh, what's that? It's like, oh, okay, let's go there. And so it's like, all right, rub your hands, get your hands together and going. Bring your hands apart. Do you feel anything there? Any tingles? Do you feel any resistance? Yeah. All right, now go up, hover over your body a little bit, and just do this little chi bath. And like, oh my goodness, I feel it. I feel tingles. And that was the first time that any of them had felt that before. So it still is a very foundational piece of what I do.
Hmm. And can you remotely heal people, or do you need them in your presence?
No, I've had one client that's in Mauritius that I've been working with since 2012 on and off. Yeah. So, energy knows no bounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. And so how do you incorporate, let's say, automatic writing, which is kind of how you got started? How do you incorporate that into your practice and how you're mentoring your clients?
That's a really interesting question. Um, so I still will do journaling and writing and get some intuitive guidance when I'm feeling the urge for a new program to come through. That's where it'll come, is through mapping it out with the writing. I also channel a lot of symbols. And when I'm doing any kind of training or when I'm tuning into what's going on intuitively for a client, I have my handy dandy little whiteboard that I'll pull out with my markers. And then I'm also often channeling an image. And then I have to pause, wait for the download of what does this mean? How is this relevant? And then even though it may not make any sense to me, my clients are like, oh, now I understand what that meant when I saw that, or when so and so said this, or things just click. So it's through images as well.
Okay, so I've got one for you. This just happened a few hours ago. My wife showed me a picture of a butterfly that she took in our backyard, or maybe it was the front yard, uh, and it's a cool looking butterfly. But the before she showed it to me, she's like, "You want to see a cool picture of a butterfly?" I'm like, "Sure." And the image that came to my mind, it's a blue morpho, and they don't live here in South Florida. They're in Costa Rica, and they're amazing. They're huge. They're just majestic looking. And then I was reading to my son in between podcast interviews because this is podcast day. We're like in the middle of the day here, and I was reading this little kind of Ranger Rick book to my 3-year-old son, and there's a blue morpho in there. It's like, oh, okay, that's not a coincidence. Um, so I'm curious, what pops into your mind when you hear this?
Is what's the significance of that image in the story? Because there's something around what was happening in the character's world in that story that relates to something that maybe you're going through or that you're witnessing somebody else going through. And there's something about anchoring in that butterfly as the transformational moment for them to really go to some sort of next level.
So it wasn't really a story. This is just kind of a find the animals in this scene and identify them. And uh, this wasn't one of the animals to identify. It was just one of the extra animals, the blue morpho. But it had some. So I mentioned Costa Rica, which we love. It's where my wife and I got married. We've been there a handful of times, and there were at least one or two other creatures in that scene that were Costa Rica native animals. One was a red-eyed tree frog, and another was, I think it might have been a bird like I don't remember which bird it was, but anyways, a couple of animals that were also Costa Rica. So I think Costa Rica is the connection here.
Beautiful. And so, what's the transformation that's waiting for you to go back to Costa Rica then in that invitation?
Well, we are going to go back this year. There's a retreat that my wife Orion is going to go to. So that's going to be, I'm sure, very transformational and powerful for her. And we've also been talking about, oh, we should get a place here too. Oh, it's such an amazing part of the world. So, yeah, those are two things that pop into my mind about that.
Is there a butterfly sanctuary at all in Costa Rica? Is that something that exists, or I I'd be curious about that. And I'd also be curious around the journey of the blue morpho. So for me, with butterflies, the monarch butterfly holds significance for me, being in Canada, somewhere where they migrate to, and just, that the journey that they go through. So what is it about the life cycle of the blue morpho that there's something for you to understand more as an animal totem too?
That's interesting. I love how you can just pop into this mode of I'm going to see what comes, and it's funny that as I'm looking out the window out the lake in the backyard at two very like precise moments, a fish jumped out of the water. One was when I started asking you about the blue morpho, which incidentally, there are no coincidences, right? So I wrote down on the show notes notes. I take notes in Evernote while we're doing the episode so that I remember everything I want to, just incorporate into the interview, and then just do this throughout the interview. I'll things will pop into my mind, and I'm like, oh, I'll add that, and I'll include that in the questions. And I wrote down blue morpho there on your show notes. I mean, on your episode notes, because I had to park it because I hadn't written it down in my. I have a God journal, and I write down things I'm grateful for and the messages I receive, and that coincidence of the blue morpho I hadn't jotted down. I'm like, I gotta remember that one. Oh, I better just jot it down right here on this computer, and next thing you know, we're talking about it. It's like, this is such a great example of how magical and synchronistic life is when you get into a place of receiving and being part of the universal life force and intelligence, and you're not just operating as a meat suit, like you're not like in materialism mode. So it's like, then all the magic happens.
Yes, I have a wonderful story that ties into this. So last week it was a full moon and a lunar eclipse, and I do art creativity as part of my morning practice. And so it was like Monday last week. I drew a picture and I drew trees black, nighttime scene, and the moon was orange, really bright orange. And it's just like, oh, isn't that interesting? It looks kind of like the sun, but it's definitely the moon. And I wasn't present to the fact that it was actually a full moon. So I drew this picture of these two trees kind of overarching and seeing the moon in between. And um, I am leading a group called Ready to Be Seen. And it's a program I love where we release the top blocks that hold entrepreneurs back. And for every single group, I pull cards to get some insights on what is the journey that I'm taking this group through, because the energy is always different based on who's there. And so the first card that I picked for that is this card here that says Moonlight. And there's the full moon with the shine, the moonlight on the water and the two trees. And then on the night of the full moon, I wasn't present in my mind that it was the night of the full moon. I said to my husband, let's go down to the lake. We live on Lake Ontario. Let's go down to the lake and just go for a walk. So we went for a walk. And then as we're about to leave, there's this gentleman there with a massive lens on his camera. And he says, yes, it's the full moon. It's just like, okay, let's come back. It was like 15 minutes. So it was going to be the moonrise. So we went, grabbed a snack, and then came back and saw the moonrise. And it was the same image as we're walking there. There's the two trees, the moonlight shining on the water, the energy just so potent, so potent. It was delicious, delicious.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's you've basically got a premonition, right? So you got the image before it happened, and now there it is, the exact image.
It's the premonition. It is reading the signs. It is feeling the pull and listening. So even today, so I was doing a presentation, as I mentioned earlier, to this corporate audience. It was in Niagara Falls, which is about an hour from where I live. And so after the presentation, I went down to the falls because I'm like literally right there and wanted to take in the energy. I love the energy of the falls. And then I was sitting down, sorting some things out. And then I was kind of dilly-daddling a little bit. I had my coat over the shoulder of my purse, and then change and a pendulum fell out, some money and a pendulum fell out on the floor. And what I got is, you have a choice to make right now, the pendulum. If you don't go and kind of get your act together, you're going to end up losing money. And I had a call that was scheduled with a prospective client. And so I needed to make sure that I got back in a timely manner and didn't dilly daddle. And so it's just interesting how you can put together the different pieces. Like the universe is constantly there guiding us. It's just whether or not we're listening.
Yeah, yeah. So the experience of deja vu is also something that popped into my mind when you were talking about that scene that you'd received, downloaded into your mind before you then saw it in quote unquote real life. So deja vu, I learned from Tina Zion, isn't just like it happened in a past life or something, but it can also be projecting yourself forward in time to other moments, locations, events, other dimensions, because time isn't linear.
Right.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I had a deja vu moment this morning when I was doing that presentation. I felt I felt it. I was sitting in the same spot. The person who invited me to speak, she was there. She was saying those things. I could see that expression. She's like, "Ooh, that's interesting." Um, Other than being present to it and other than resonating with what you just said of time being not linear, and sometimes we're like jumping timelines in those moments. Glitch in the matrix is kind of what I'm feeling is the words that want to come out right now. That's all that comes up for me. But I feel like there's also something more to explore here that I have never considered that we're going to tap into.
I think so too. So a couple of things about that. One, regarding jumping timelines, there's this fabulous article by Tom Kenyon, and it's the art of jumping timelines. Are you familiar with that article?
No, but I'm familiar with Tom Kenyon, so I'm eager to hear more about this.
Yeah, well, his it's phenomenal. He actually channeled it, and I guess it was the Hathors that he channeled it from.
Hmm.
And a couple of interesting points about this article, which I'll include in the show notes. So for our listener, if you are intrigued by this concept, please do read the article. It's really, really good. It made a profound impact on me, and I had to go back to it several times over the course of months, and I got new levels of understanding from that article at the different times. So one of these concepts conveyed in the article is a timeline bleed through, where multiple timelines are all happening simultaneously and they all exist for our highest and best good, and we can jump timelines. Why do they exist for our highest and best good? The biggest reason, my understanding is of this, is so that we can experience a timeline review or life review at the end of our lives, where we get to explore, like a choose your own adventure book, what our lives could have been like if we'd made some different choices. It's not enough to just see your life flash in front of your eyes and like, oh boy, that was a stupid thing to do. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, that was awful what I did. Well, what would have happened if I had restricted my reactivity? What would have happened if I had been more proactive? What would have happened if I had operated from a place of loving kindness um, and the most benevolent outcome as my focal point for all these different decisions and actions that I made? Oh, let's see, and then see it all play out fully to conclusion, to your life's end, with each different scenario. That's why timelines exist. That's my understanding of it. So if you can, and by the way, there's a great movie from the 90s that I would recommend if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it for a long time. It's with Gwyneth Paltrow. It's called Sliding Doors.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So you'll get new insights from that movie if you watch it again.
So there's a couple things that come up for me in this conversation. One, I remember reading the book Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. Have you ever read that one?
No, but I've been reading or listening to the audiobook of his second one. What's the second one called? It's not Journey of Souls. It's something of Souls, though.
Yeah, I can't remember. Um, but for those who haven't read that book, he was a hypnotherapist, and he found that in order to help people heal or move through different issues, he would take them back to the first incidents. And sometimes he was taking them back to so many previous lifetimes, even into the ice ages. And so he came up with this idea of mapping out the journey of souls. And in doing so, he talks about this moment of where we're picking the lifetime, where the soul, and you go through your evolution with sort of a soul family, and you're in this sort of movie screenish room, and you can look at different lives to evaluate, fast forward, reverse. And what you're describing for me is almost like that same moment. And because time isn't linear, it's the same thing happening. End of life, beginning of life, it's the same.
And your future lives and your past lives are all happening in the simultaneous eternal now, just like this life is happening. Yeah. So the book I read or listened to is Destiny of Souls, and I do believe that there were some stories in there about being in that kind of a reading room or library where you're reviewing your past lives and your immediately past life and what you could have done differently and so forth, and kind of gets sucked into that interactive movie.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the purpose of having timelines. But then what's the practical application of these timelines? Okay, well, that's cool. And it's actually becoming part of the vernacular and the pop culture of today. For example, if you go onto Netflix or Disney Plus or something, you can watch, let's say, a Marvel show called Loki, which is kind of dark, actually. I don't recommend it. Marvel and Disney are kind of dark. But anyways, the TV show, the premise of Loki is that there's a version of him in one timeline that is rogue in terms of it's not part of the approved primary timeline, what they refer to in the show as the sacred timeline. And then they have these timeline police that try to chase down these variants who are from alternate timelines and trap them and capture them, send them into like a no man's land. So if this is part of the pop culture timelines, and of course it's been around since the 90s, at least since that movie Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, where there's two versions of her. One misses the train and the other one catches the train, and they're completely different lives based on that simple moment. And it follows the course of her life through both variations. And then there's a bleed through moment where she passes out in one, or she's injured or something, like something happens, I forget exactly, but in the other version of her, she feels it and she almost falls to the floor. She's at a table, waiting that table as a waitress, and she needs to hold on to something because she's about to pass out. So these timeline bleed through moments happen at times, especially at times where multiple timelines kind of meet a timeline node. And that happens in times of greater chaos. So when there's a lot of chaos happening in the world, that's kind of like the opposite of certainty, which is something that is a great um, gift from above, right? Certainty is something that you can't count on, and it's not even part of the normal experience of life on this physical plane, in this physical plane. But you can be gifted it if you pray for it, you ask God for it, and it comes from the higher dimensions, from the higher sferot, to use a Hebrew term from Kabbalah. You get gifted it, and now, I can navigate this world with so much more certainty and faith and trust, because I feel everything happening for me. I don't just kind of have the bumper sticker of life happens for you, not to you. It's like, no, I really get it. I feel it in my bones. I experience it. I am it. I'm not just talking it.
There's a couple of things that come up for me. One, around this conversation for the certainty, it's a complete depth of knowingness, which requires you to detach from the energetic chaos that's around you. And it's so tricky with the constant entanglement. If you have a core group of, I don't know why, the word superheroes wants to come out, of people who have the strength and the focus and the courage to kind of fling off all of these other concepts to stay true to that knowingness inside. When you can surround yourself with more people that are at least on that same path and that are in that frame of mind, that it gets easier to do because you create your own little bubble around that. And then the other thing that comes up for me around the timelines and the bleed throughs is with the drawings that I will do, symbols will come up, and I've been working with the symbol of the Merkaba for a long time. And recently I got that all of those intersections for the Merkaba are those opportunities for timeline jumping, those intersection moments, and that there was something far greater for me to know and understand and to help people with navigating through in their business, to go from that stuck timeline where they can kind of see where they want to go, but they're just stuck like that skipping record in this old dimension because they're so connected to the past intelligence or past knowingness, and they just can't break through. And it's like I can be this bridge to help them get over that intersection and then whoosh to make that next level growth so that they don't have to put up with the crap of the old thinking, the old energies, the old entanglement, and to move through much more elegantly. So thank you for helping me with that awareness. That's pretty juicy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so since you let's just keep going down this rabbit hole here. So since you said superheroes, what comes to my mind is my psychic super friends or psychic SEAL team, I also refer to them as. And there are about 15 of them. Most of them I know personally, but a few of them I haven't really had any conversations with yet or had them on my podcast yet. But I know they're legit. I just know, I have that inner knowing that they're legit, and they are energy healers. They're psychic mediums. They're medical intuitives, remote viewers, automatic writers, like all types of psychics. And it's just such an amazing resource to be able to pull from this list and share with somebody. Let's say Jay Lasco. She's a incredibly gifted psychic who is able to tap into your past lives and cellular imprints and past life traumas and so forth, and heal them, rewrite the imprints, help you to replace them with better ones. And she uses muscle testing on herself while she's asking you to repeat different things and to like uh, let's say she's having you go through and scan your body and talk about different body parts and different things that you're she just gives you the things to say, and then she tests it, the truth of it, uh, or whether it's weak or strong, with muscle testing on herself. And she's amazing. She was a recommendation of a past guest on the show, Aaron Scotty, the guy who produced, the executive producer of the movie, the Peanut Butter Falcon. And I just love referring Jay to my friends and clients and different people that I get the nudge to refer her to. And she's one of the 15 or so people on my psychic super friends list. That's one thing that popped into my mind while you were talking about superheroes. And then the second thing, when you're talking about that bridge, The Last Mimsy is a fabulous movie. It's a science fiction movie. And I remember a scene where the little boy who has this gift with structure and building stuff with his consciousness, not just his mind, but his consciousness and his intention. And he helped his little sister to basically save humanity in the future. Because I won't spoil the plot because it's really kind of fun and interesting. But it's a great movie for kids. It's really uplifting. One of the few uplifting science fiction movies out there. Most things are so dystopian and dark when it's dealing with the future. And I just I love that movie. So those are two things that pop into my mind. Anything land there for you on those?
Yeah. So where that leads me to is this deep awareness of how all of my clients that are coming to me, I'm really just healing a part of me. So I've attracted a number of women that are about 10, 15 years older than me. And it's just like, I feel like I'm healing a version of me that is on that timeline that will allow me to jump to a greater possibility, not only for me, but for them. Yeah, that was an interesting
Yeah,
insight that
that's
came out.
cool. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here's my kitty.
Uh,
Sorry.
no apologies necessary. So your cat wanted to chime in. What is your cat's name, and is it a boy or girl?
Her name is Haley. So I'll tell you the story of her predecessor, Cassie. My son had this book called Itty Bitty Kitty. And on the front of it was a picture of a diluted calico kitten. So she's kind of patchwork of uh, black, brown, and white. And this little kitty went on this adventure and got lost. And then this hotel bell person took her in and they adopted her. And so he got that when he was about 2. About 3 years later, there was this one really, really cold December day where me and my little boys, we were out for a walk. My husband, it was cold, it was dark, there had been a lot of snow. And we're walking through the neighborhood and we hear this meow and a meow and a meow. And so we saw this cat out in front of a neighbor's house. So we knocked on the door. I said, "Your cat got outside." They're like, "We know she's there, but she's not our cat and we can't even let her in because we have a dog." It's like, "Oh my goodness, well, we can't leave this cat out overnight." And so we brought her in. A neighbor had 2 cats and had 2 litter boxes, so they let us have a litter box. We brought her in that night. My husband and son went knocking on some doors, couldn't find the owner, and I was terrified because I had visions of this cat like climbing up my curtains and tearing up the place. And well, in the end, that night I couldn't sleep very well. So I was reading a book on the couch and she just curled up right next to me. We took her to the Humane Society to see if her owner would be able to find her. We put up some signs in the neighborhood, went to the local pet food store too, and nothing. And so we ended up adopting her. And it took me a while, but she had the exact same coloring as the cat on the in the book Itty Bitty Kitty. So it's just interesting the way cats have been a big part of my spiritual journey too. With the predecessor Cassie, she had this eye infection and it got really bad, covering 3/4 of her eye. And this is as I was developing on my spiritual journey. I remember taking her to the vet and nothing would clear it. I tried all sorts of different things, nothing would clear it. But what did clear it was me going deeper in my spiritual journey, changing my perception and getting clearer vision. And that's when it healed.
Oh, wow.
So she was mirroring me.
Yes, our pets are mirrors. And that's another important thing for us to cover in this episode. A family member, I'm not going to say who, has a pet who has been getting sick as she's been getting sick, challenged with an addiction. You know, I mentioned to this person that this is not random, and that this pet is here, chose like volunteered to be here to be this mirror for you. So if you're going to face these challenges and succumb to addiction, you're going to not just go down with the ship, the animal is going to go down with you. And that gave this person pause to really reflect and think about, okay, what kind of life choices do I want to make? So when you are going through whatever the challenges or the addiction or the life lesson, know that your animal chose to support you through this, and you guys have the soul contract, and you chose to do this together.
Mm-hmm. When I first received my modality Connect to You, one of the first volunteer that I practiced my modality on was a friend that was a Reiki master. She was not in a good spot at the time. She was going through a difficulty of a lawsuit. She knew she was right, but the other party was denying it and denying it and denying it. And she was so stressed out about it. She would be hugging her dog and hugging her dog. And it got to be such a burden on her dog that the dog was having a hard time lifting up its neck. It was just taking on so much of her energy. So it's pretty crazy. We did a lot of shifting when we did the Connect to You modality, and everything flipped to be in her favor within 4 weeks. So it was pretty crazy. And then, of course, the dog got better too. When I started my journey, there were so many synchronicities that were happening that I remember asking my husband over and over again, do you think I'm crazy yet? And he's like, stop asking me that.
That's a low vibration question.
That was just where I was at. And it was just so incredible what I was experiencing. And my logical mind was trying to find explanation for it. And your reflection of me using that word is a reminder of there's a little bit of something of a fear of judgment that needs to be healed.
Yeah. Yeah. Our words are very powerful. That's how we manifest a lot of our reality is through our words. And that's how the word became flesh, and everything started with the word. Like these energy packets of Hebrew letters created our reality, the creation that we're experiencing. So be mindful of your words.
Thank you for the reminder to kick it up a notch. Thank you.
Positive note, like, it's not crazy when these synchronicities happen and things that are just beyond the realm of logic. It's just the odds don't compute. The odds are in the trillions, one in trillions, that these things would happen simultaneously, or they're completely unrelated, and yet at least causally related. So it seems in the material world, but then in the upper worlds, it's all divine timing and divine orchestration. And the synchronicities are the scaffolding of the universe. This is how the universe works. So it's the opposite of crazy. It is by divine design. So, as an example, I'll share with you that in just the past hour and a bit, I had a previous interview. It was Neil Moore. So, that episode will probably have just aired uh, like a week or two earlier by the time this episode airs. And one of the topics we discussed was one of my daughters, Cassie. So we talked about your cat, Cassie, and she's a piano teacher, and she's an entrepreneur, and she has all these students in Orange County, California. So we were talking about this, and that's an example of synchronicity. Another clue or breadcrumb in the trail that helps us to see that everything is connected and everybody is connected. So you heal yourself when you're healing others, because we're all one, which is something that you talked about just a few minutes ago. So these kinds of synchronicities and serendipities are the kind of the universal operating system.
Mm-hmm. Magic.
So yeah, I love magic too. So tell me where were you thinking of going in this conversation when you said glitch in the matrix a little while ago?
It's about the dichotomy of the world that we think we're living and what we really believe is possible in our heart. And sometimes there are those moments of truth where the universe is trying to remind us, hey, over here, remember that feeling? And then there's a synchronistic sign to be that, hey, over here, remember? And sometimes that bleed through is just there to remind us that things aren't quite as solid as they seem. Tap into your magic, into your potential, and bring it to life. Be the creator that you are.
What pops into my mind as you're talking is the phrase from the movie The Lion King: remember who you are. That was Mufasa saying that to Simba, and then Simba collapses, and the scent of him floats in the air and gets picked up by the baboon, the magical baboon, right? I forget his name, but then he knows Simba's coming back. Like he can see that he's got that premonition ability. He can see into the future, and he knows, okay, Simba was lost, but now he's going to be found again. He did not die, and that remember who you are is how you go from a seemingly dark kind of connotation of that Matrix movie, which was actually divinely downloaded. That whole script. Um, Forget her name, but she submitted the screenplay to a contest in the 80s, a science fiction writing or movie writing contest or something, and never heard anything. And then a decade later, the movie comes out and it's like, hey, that was my movie. I wrote that. So there's a whole um, thing about that. Sophia something or other. Sophia Stewart. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm finding that I'm getting triggered by the word premonition, and I don't know why.
Tell me more about that.
It feels like there's something icky and unstable and uncertain and unheard of. It feels like a scolding, something from another lifetime where I perhaps was a seer and I'm feeling like this presence of this man with a top hat on and what are you doing there talking about this premonition stuff? Go. And I'm feeling really demeaned and so not really not wanting to use that language because it gets dismissed and isn't believed and isn't trusted. It's interesting.
Do you feel like you were maybe persecuted in that lifetime?
The words that want to come out are maybe better than persecuted, sent away. uh yeah, just like go away. We can't cope with what it is that you're saying. So I and that feels linked to that whole feeling of the early journey of do you think I'm crazy yet, and the fear of judgment from my husband then, or and other people around. Is she going crazy? Am I going to be pushed away? Am I going to be ostracized again for it?
Yeah. Well, it's like you're if you were sent away in uh, many societies, that's essentially death because you rely on your community for so much of your livelihood. And and you're trading different goods and things, and you're part of that tribe and living on your own. Yeah, being sent away is death.
You know what comes up for me as you say that though is Tarzan, an image of Tarzan living out there, being immersed in nature and finding something that's even wiser than what else was known.
Well, right, because everything is always for our highest and best good. It is by design to be that way. And if we don't see it, it's just an unrevealed blessing. So blessings are either revealed or unrevealed. If they're revealed, then it's obvious, like, oh wow, I just won the lottery. Well, actually, that could be a lot of pain coming because people in studies have been worse off more often than not from the lottery than if they had not won at all. They were actually better off beforehand. But the unrevealed blessings are those challenges where we think we're going through hell, but when you go through hell, just keep on going because at a wider angle or perspective, you can see that, wait a second, that actually was the best thing that could happen to me. And I wouldn't change it for anything. Like my chiropractor getting cancer in 2006 or 7 or whenever it was. And he's just like, that was one of the best things that happened in my life. I almost died and it changed me. I'm a better human. I'm a better soul and a better servant to God because of what happened. And I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, it's pretty miraculous, the strange unfoldings that occur. And Mm. How we can't understand the whole magic of it all. There's an affirmation that I say every day, and part of it is, I forgive those who trespass against me, much like the Lord's Prayer. For I know that there is only one power, and that this is for my highest unfoldment, and just always reaffirming that whatever it may be messy in the moment, there's something really magical on the other side of it.
Yeah, amazing. Would you mind sharing that prayer with our listeners in the show notes?
Sure. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so that yeah, just email that to me later, and then I'll make sure that that's included in the show notes. Uh, One thing that pops to my mind while you're talking also is this idea of premonition being a foretelling or predicting of the future. And one thing that was a powerful message and um, distinction that I got from above, from the upper worlds, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was stop trying to predict the future stuff or foretell it. Instead, try to work on creating it. And that's where the timeline jumping that we talked about ties in, because you, by being on a higher vibration that aligns better with a more benevolent type of timeline, with not dystopian dire things happening to humanity, but instead a more miraculous revealed blessing type of unfolding, you can choose that. And it's not that you're jumping the timeline, it's that you're being invited, and you choose to accept the invitation, because it's not up to you. You're co-creating, you're not creating. God is the creator. So, put your ego in check and be humble and know that you're just working with God's energy, and this is all God. The money that you have in the bank account isn't your money, it's God's money. It's not your business, it's God's business. It's not your family, it's God's family, and you're the steward of all this stuff. So if you're operating from that place of humility, you can jump timelines and get upgraded all to business class and first class and VIP and all that, red velvet.
What comes up for me is the title of your podcast about get yourself optimized. It's like there's this invitation that's really extended to everybody. And what I'm being shown is there was this moment years ago when I went to Beverly Hills, and we went to this club where there was that long lineup. And because somebody knew a guy at the door, let us all in. And so there's this exclusivity and feeling special, but we all have that potential to be that special person. We just have to get ourselves optimized. And in my world, I talk about having a full inner battery and in that thriving state and just hanging out there more time. And then it just happens, it unfolds. Pure magic.
Awesome. And when you said special, then I was reminded to point out that we're all equally important.
Yes.
The homeless person, you don't even know his name and you see him every day. You really should know his name and greet him by name. But like, we're all equally important. You, the homeless person, president of the United States, and everybody else, we're all equal in importance, but we are all special in our own way. We all have that unique kind of signature to who we are, our energetic signature. And so we make the wholeness complete. What one candle less in the sun means one candle less in the sun. It's not the sun without all of its candles, and you're one of those candles, one of those lights. So I got that analogy from a great little children's book by Neil Donald Walsh, The Little Soul and the Sun. Do you know that book?
I love it. Thank you. This has been such a delight.
This was, delightful is a great word for it. And if our listener or viewer is intrigued and excited and wanting to work with you, how do they get in touch and start that process?
Sure, you can visit my website, jlyall.com, and you can connect with me there, learn a bit more about my magic, and reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you, listener. I hope you're inspired to create some magic in the world and reveal some light. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.